Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. I am here as ever with Francis and Tom, and you guys have been doing something very fun this week at Pay360.
We have indeed. We've been getting out of the house and getting out into the world of payments this week. It was really good, actually. I think a lot of the time when events change venue, you're always like, oh, is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? Is it going to be a bit unorganized? But it all went really well. I think it was a good event. There was a lot of good content there. We got a chance to speak to a lot of people at our booth, and yeah, it was just a really good experience to get some networking done and just meet everyone in the payments industry that we know by name, but don't usually get a chance to speak to in person. So it was really nice.
Yeah, I just want to sort of echo everything that you said. It was a really enjoyable event. It was a lot of fun, like you said, really, to just get to know all the people that we speak to sort of on a regular basis. But like you said, we don't really know their faces that well. We don't know them in person. But it was nice to sort of get to know everyone, and like you said, the panels and listening to the experts, it was all really insightful, and all in all, just a really fun event. Everything about it, from the way it was set up to what was said to the people attending, can only say good things about it.
Oh, amazing. It sounds fantastic. I was really sorry to miss it this year. But hopefully you'll be bringing some of the fantastic insights and things that you've learned from Pay360 to the podcast today. In which case, what are you guys going to be talking about, Tom?
So yeah, this week I am going to be talking about a new partnership between Nationwide and Signly, which is hoping to make banking more accessible, and bringing in a bit of insight from Pay360 as well.
Fantastic stuff. And Francis, how about you?
Going to save my insights from Pay360 till the end, but the article that I wanted to bring to the table today is about Robinhood, the stock trading and investment firm, officially launching in the UK.
Amazing stuff. And I'm going to be talking about the sort of debacle that has been happening at the moment with a lot of major retailers in terms of accepting card payments and kind of the future of the payments industry as a very high level. But anyway, Tom, I'm going to let you go first because I'm very intrigued to hear what you're going to say. So take it away.
Okie doke. Well, as we've spoken about many times before, we always talk about access to finance and how it's a challenge for people with disabilities. However, like I said at the beginning, this new partnership between UK bank Nationwide and Signly, which is a British Sign Language tech company, caught my attention. And that's because this partnership is making sure that Nationwide's website is now accessible in BSL. And it's launching at the same time as Sign Language Week, which is actually occurring right now at the time of recording, running from the 18th to the 24th of March. So basically, on Nationwide's website, this British Sign Language content is going to come in the form of pre-recorded sign videos, with the most popular web pages that people use the most available first. And they're going to grow the content gradually over time. And basically, users can select any new pages that they want to be translated that haven't been already. So I just thought it was a really good example of helping financial inclusion, helping those with disabilities access finance more easily, make it easier for them to manage their money and understand these different web pages. And yeah, I think, like I said, at Pay360, we found out a lot about that as well. One of the areas that I always like to hear about is innovation, better in financial inclusion. We heard from Jane Sibley, who's the co-founder and CEO of Sibstar at the event. Sibstar is obviously the debit card app, which is helping families living with dementia to manage their everyday spending. And we also heard from Henk van Huel, who's the CEO of Open Banking Limited. And during a panel, he explained how open banking could have a transformative impact and improve people's lives. I think he was basically saying about how one of its third-party providers are focusing on non-discriminatory lending to support vulnerable customers, support key workers like NHS workers, as well as civil servants. And this TPP is basically improving lending by enriching the thin credit files of these people using open banking. And yeah, I think that really just brought this to my attention, especially because I thought we are seeing a lot of, shall I say, like things driving forward for financial inclusion, improving people's lives with new innovations. And I think it's just quite heartening to see, really, when we see new innovations, how important they are. And I think sometimes it's almost easy to forget about. We're always talking about new innovations in payments or banking or whatever it is, and you think, oh, well, this is all new and exciting. But some people just don't have the privilege or the ability to access these new innovations and developments. So it's nice to see these, well, a range of initiatives and ideas that are coming into the forefront and trying to help people to basically access it. So with that in mind, I really just wanted to get your guys' take on, the advancement of financial inclusion. Are you happy with the existing initiatives? Are there any initiatives you really like the most? Or do you think it's moving forward still a little bit too slowly? We have so much innovation going on, but are there any areas that, you'd like to see more focus on to try and speed up this kind of idea of financial inclusion? Polly, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think it's all really fantastic. Like, obviously, it's great to see this particular example from Nationwide really championing financial inclusion for people. And I think we're coming to a point now in the industry where change is happening. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to be an instant thing, but I think we're seeing more and more now, and I'm sure you guys saw a lot of it at Pay 360. There's a lot of things going on, and I think with a lot of, there's still a lot of work to go, but I think things really are starting to take a turn in terms of financial inclusivity, and really people are starting to think about it a bit more. And I know there's a lot of people doing a lot of really great work in the space. I know Joanne Dewar is doing some really fantastic stuff at the moment with like Purple Tuesday and things like that. And there's a lot of things happening to really shine a light on how we can make the financial world, the fintech world, more inclusive to people. And in a lot of ways, it's always, I think, in ways that we as, people who aren't affected by, various disabilities or things like that wouldn't necessarily think of. So like when I was reading through this piece, for example, about the Nationwide adding BSL videos to their website, that's something I never would have thought about because I'm not deaf and I don't know anyone who is deaf and I've never been affected by that. But to have that as a feature is probably like life-changing for a lot of people. So I think the more we talk about this and the more little things happen and the more big things happen, I think we're going to get to a point where the industry really is starting to be inclusive for everyone. And I think when we talk about inclusion, I think people often sort of think very narrow-mindedly, not in any like malicious way, but when we talk about financial inclusion, we think about, maybe people who are on the poorer end of the spectrum, we don't have as much sort of income, or maybe we think about, people who are moving from other countries when we talk about financial inclusion, or we think about women as a gender specifically. But there are so many other different facets of that, being deaf as an example, or like other different things like being like neurodiversity or other disabilities, or things like that, that I think that we need to start thinking about from a huge perspective, because there's so many different ways that people are being left out of certain financial products and services, that until we get to a place where everyone is on an equal playing field, then I don't think we can stop working. But I know that there are people out there putting the work in and doing it. So I really do think this year really feels like the year. And I think whether it's all going to happen this year, I don't know, but it definitely feels like the year of things really changing and turning a corner. And I don't know, maybe that's me being hopeful, but I can really feel it in the air right now with the kind of the stuff I'm hearing and the stuff that other people are doing and I'm hearing about. So I think it's a really exciting time to be in fintech. And I think it's one of those things where it's not necessarily a choice anymore. It's like you get on board or that's it. That's kind of the only option. So it's going to be really great to see exactly how it all plays out. But no, this year is the year. I'm calling it.
Yeah, I think you're right when you said, like, it's so easy to be unaware of the extent of the difficulties that people go through. I think it's almost very easy, because we're not, none of us are deaf or anything like that. We are. I almost have this preconceived notion. It's obviously wrong, but it's very easy to think, well, I don't know many deaf people, but I'm sure that people who are deaf have access to the services they need when it comes to banking. If you're not affected by that, or you don't know someone directly who is, I think it, in many cases, like in most people's everyday lives, it's easy to think, oh, I'm sure that they have what the support they need in order to access, the everyday things that we take for granted. And one of the aspects of this article, which I found really interesting, is that the British Deaf Association is currently ramping up calls for greater acknowledgement of the needs of deaf people. And it estimates that BSL is the first language of over 87,000 deaf people in the UK, meaning that written English is inaccessible, for many of them. And I think that's, you look at 87,000, you think that's a huge number and it's really those stats that I think hit home the hardest. You think, wow, this is a lot of people that this kind of thing can directly benefit, really positively. And I think it's just a good initiative. And I think often you can think, these companies put these releases out just for a bit of, good publicity. But I think it really is important to hear about these kind of developments and realize actually this wasn't available, even a month ago in many cases. And we need more of these initiatives and more people to be aware of the need for these initiatives in order to keep driving them forward, and for big banks or small startups like Sibstar to continue doing the work that they are doing and support people overall. But Francis, what's your take on all this?
I really liked what Polly was saying and about, hopefully this is the year that everything really starts to sort of take shape, and that we recognize the importance of financial, well, not we, but, the industry really recognizes the importance of financial inclusion and making sure everything is as accessible for every single community that needs it, really. I think another interesting thing, sort of, that I think you were mentioning just now, Tom, sort of related to, or from like the insights that we got from Pay 360, was there was a talk show on financial inclusion during the event, and it was Jane Sibley, the CEO and co-founder of Sibstar, I believe, who said that partnerships bring more than just funding and endorsements, they bring more than just funding, and they really endorse what you're doing, which is incredibly impactful when you're going alone as a fintech. And I think sort of Nationwide taking that initiative, sort of saying, almost setting the path and really lighting the way for other big incumbents to partner with these fintechs that are tackling a certain niche in the area, which, as we all know, is where fintechs really shine. And I think that is in and of itself really, really good and really impressive. But I think personally, what I liked a lot about the article and about what Nationwide is offering really is that it's targeting the most popular pages already to translate them into sign and have signed videos. But I like that users can then request certain pages to be translated as well. And it creates this idea that it's really up to the consumer what they want to see, and what they're the ones that are being prioritized. It's not a case of necessarily going, oh, well, in time, in 2 weeks, we'll have another page. We're not going to know which one it's going to be. It might be one that you want, it might not be, but we're going to do it at our own leisure. No, instead, it's sort of saying, what do you want translated and how can we help you? And it's a small thing. It's not a big thing at all, but I do think it does play a part in making customers that have had sort of barriers to access to finance really feel valued and that they're being listened to. And I think at the end of the day, that's what every consumer wants. And I think it's a very good step by Nationwide to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, financial inclusion as just a topic is obviously so important. I think it's just a really good forward step. And this type of initiative and publicity can only do good things to help drive it further forward. So, yeah, I think it's just a good area to keep an eye on and always to bring attention to whenever we can on the podcast.
Yeah, so the story I want to talk about today is kind of, it's a pretty hot topic at the moment, I guess, now, and just in like the general world, never mind in fintech. But essentially, we've had a spell of major retailers see a lot of technical issues that have been affecting their ability to take card payments. So we've kind of seen this a lot over the past sort of days and weeks. The most recent was Greg's on Wednesday, who could not take any contactless or card payments because of a technical issue. But then over the weekend, we had Sainsbury's and Tesco's having similar issues. Even I think McDonald's and Argos have had some issues over the time. So it's a really widespread issue at the moment that a lot of these big major retailers are having these technical issues that mean that they cannot take card payments. And it's leaving a lot of customers high and dry because obviously, who carries cash anymore. I don't think many people do. And so it's kind of evolved into this really interesting debate, which we covered this week in a story, in terms of, can we ever be cashless as a society if we have issues like this arising? So I think, obviously, as you guys know, there's been just a major push to digital banking, digital payments, digital everything over the past few years. And one push that has been, reasonably successful, since you find the majority of payments now are made with some sort of card, if not, a physical card or Apple Pay or things like that. Cash is used not as much as it used to be, which is kind of, after the COVID pandemic, is kind of makes sense, as we're moving away from it. However, the idea of a fully cashless society is something that has been floating around for a very long time, and I think it's always kind of been the end goal for this sort of digitization and innovation. Certainly in various different economies, it's always been the end goal to get rid of cash. Whether that happens anytime soon, whether that's sort of like a distant future kind of plan, whatever. But I think it's interesting to think, how can we actually ever be cashless now when we are at the mercy of technology? I think technology is a really fantastic tool. Obviously, to live with the conveniences of the modern era is quite wonderful in a lot of ways, but technology can fail. Things can happen that make technology not work. And I think this is a really obvious example of that. When people couldn't go to Sainsbury's to buy their shopping because their contactless card payments weren't working and they didn't have any cash, so people couldn't buy shopping, and that was it. They've lost millions and millions of pounds, all of the different companies, because they couldn't take card payments for like one day. Obviously it was all resolved reasonably quickly and everything got back to normal as soon as it could, but that's still a significant amount of lost revenue, and as well a significant amount of sort of customer complaints and people being not very happy about it, because if you want to go get your shopping and you can't get your shopping, that's kind of your day scuppered. And I think it's just a really interesting idea of, is this something that can ever happen now, or are we always going to be at the mercy of, little problems, whether that's problems with the technology or problems with anything else? But this is something we've seen as well recently, when Facebook and Instagram went down a couple of weeks ago. And obviously that was a big deal for a lot of different like businesses and small businesses, because a lot of people rely on Facebook and Instagram for their advertising and as well just to like make sales. So that went down as well. So we're seeing a lot of different people, a lot of different platforms go down, for want of a better word. So I guess what I wanted to talk about today is, I guess, what you think about the situation in general, and do you think that, a cashless economy is ever going to be a good idea, or is it something that we're always going to rely on? And I think, just before I get your guys' opinions, I do want to say the one thing that I really love. So I spoke to Martin Quinn from Payment Choice Alliance, who actually experienced the issues. He went to Sainsbury's on Saturday and couldn't buy what he wanted to buy. And he said, always carry cash because cash doesn't crash. And that little phrase, cash doesn't crash, I absolutely love that. But I think that's a really interesting idea because, it doesn't crash. I mean, obviously we can talk about like market crashes or whatever, blah, 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 inflation. But at the end of the day, you will pretty much always be able to use cash, even if you can't use card. And so, I don't know, I'd love to know what you guys think about this. Tom, what do you think about cash, cardless, this whole thing?
It really does like just show us how one like big outage can have such a big impact. Like you said, some of the biggest retailers like in the country are being hit by this, and it meant people couldn't buy from them. Some of the stores just didn't open at all because they thought, well, we can't make any sales today because of these issues. And I think it's this type of event, albeit that it did, like you said, it didn't last too long, that it's going to just have a big impact on maybe the big companies' outlook on going completely cashless. You know, the one time they're going to take notice is when pockets are being hit as well and they're making less money, and they are likely going to be considering now, what do we do if this happens again? And the obvious answer is have some sort of cash reserve so that if you need to accept cash and give people change and stuff, that you are able to have that transition if all your systems go down. And like Martin said, it definitely can't hurt to have some cash on you in case these systems go down. And in terms of going completely cashless, I think I don't really see a situation or a time when you can basically guarantee there's not going to be any crashes. There's always going to be some sort of technical hitch, whether it's a power outage or a hack or something that's causes these outages. There's so many ways it can happen. it means there is always potential for a completely cashless society to really struggle if there is that kind of outage. So I think really it's just a case of, it just proves that a lot of the people that have been campaigning to maintain cash and to enable cash to be spent in every store in the country still, despite these sort of drive for cashless, that it actually isn't necessarily the best way forward. And realistically, after this, it makes you think, well, surely the best is a mix of the two. And if you want to go completely digital, then that's an option. But certainly, cash is going to be something that's required, even if it's just for the outages in the future. You are still going to need cash at some point, and it's a hugely important thing that we maintain access for cash.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you've hit it entirely on the head there. And I think what I've sort of taken from this after, like speaking to various different people about it and getting their thoughts, I think it comes down to, like, you're right, this could happen with anything. Like you could, like you say, the power cuts, things like that. So it's all about having a good range of diverse alternative payment methods, like having a lot of choice. And I know we've talked about that before, about, being able to meet consumer demands by having a lot of different choices in your payment methods. But I think actually it's actually having those choices in order to have like plan Bs for all your different payment methods. I think that's going to be the goal here, because as great as it is to have, card payments and digital payments and all the rest of that, if they fail, then you kind of, what can you do? But if you have various different ways that people can make payments for you, then suddenly you've got options, and suddenly it's less of a major stress. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of like access to cash. I don't think it's ever going anywhere, because people use cash in a lot of different ways. And one thing I spoke on in the article, which there was at Pay360, actually, someone said at Pay360, I think it was someone from NatWest. Jessica Richards from NatWest said on stage at Pay360 that while cash is in decline, its usage is actually going up in the younger generation. Because I don't know if you guys have seen on TikTok all those like cash stuffing videos where people will take out their cash for the month and put them in these cute little binders and stuff. So I think, there's always going to be a use for cash. And so it's interesting to kind of see what this situation will have in that, the campaign to keep cash that a lot of people are going on. But I mean, Francis, what do you think about all this?
I think it was a massive wake up call to have a sort of a crash, albeit like you said, a quickly resolved one. Well, relatively quickly resolved. I mean, it wasn't sort of like 10 minutes. It was a good while, but it wasn't like weeks or days on weeks or whatever. It was quickly resolved. Nonetheless, I don't know. I feel like, in what situation do you think, oh, I'm going to go do my weekly shop? That, say, costs between 40 to however much you want to spend, right? I'm going to say minimum 40, perhaps minimum 30, but realistically minimum 40. And I just don't see a world where people are carrying around 40 quid in cash. I think the thing is people say, oh yeah, you need cash. You always need to have some money on you. All right, the most you'll have is a tenner, maybe 20 quid. Well, this might just be me being naive, but I don't see a world where people are going to be carrying around wads of cash just because they think, oh, it might be necessary at some point. No, that just doesn't happen. And I don't know. I just think that, that is it's a big thing where everyone's like, oh, cash doesn't crash, as Martin Quinn said. But it's like, in what universe am I going to be carrying around loads of money just on the off chance that things don't work? So I think when you guys were saying sort of like a plan B is really necessary, I think, yes, it definitely is. And it needs to be a plan B which still accommodates somewhat for digital payments. I don't really know how that would work, but I think to sort of say that, we're just going to rely on physical money again, I don't think that's the way forward, because that's going to massively limit. One, it's going to have to make people look for the nearest ATMs, which aren't always accessible, because, people don't know where they are anymore, because who uses cash, right? So one, that's going to have to happen. And two, then there'd be queues for it. Three, that'd just be inconvenient. And you just go somewhere else to do your shopping. So all in all, I think it is like a massive, massive wake-up call to sort of say, we need to have a backup plan, a sort of a fail-safe should the main systems go down, because I don't think saying, but, physical money will still always reign supreme. I think that isn't the case. I think most people would just look to another option where they can go digital. And then this is, I suppose, where you get into the question of what if everywhere goes down and there is no digital option? Well, I think we just call that the apocalypse at that point. I don't know what else. I don't know if there's a solution there. But
I was waiting for like a really big, grandiose like statement from you then about what do we do when the world goes down, and I'm quite disappointed that I didn't get one.
Well, am I wrong though? I don't know. I think I'm kind of right. I think I hit the nail on the
I mean,
head.
you are right, but
Personally.
that's besides the point.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a solution to that. But when I do, I'll be sure to share it.
Yeah, I think, but what you've said, I think you're right. I think it's one of those situations where you kind of can't have one or the other, and I think you've got to have lots of different options, because I think you're right. Carrying cash around with you at all times to cover everything. I mean, you say like a food shop. I mean, a family of 4 food shop, I think, comes to about £100 a week now, if not more. So like carrying like 100 quid on you at all times is just a bit, I don't know, unrealistic, and also not great for security, really. Like, you never know. But I mean, it's interesting. I guess it's definitely a wake up call. And I wonder if we're going to see anything come of this in terms of like other alternative, like digital payments that maybe could be used if like cards go down. I don't know. But it's an interesting situation. And I have been sitting this week wondering who's going to be next. Like, it was Sainsbury's, it was Tesco's, it was Greg's. Who's next on the list? Who can say? I don't know. But anyway, let's move on. And Francis, let's do yours.
Absolutely, yeah. So my article this week was surrounding Robinhood, the stock trading and investment firm, and it has officially launched in the UK after it began its waiting list to sort of trial out and sort of understand UK consumer preferences in November of 2023. So over the years, we've seen the investment platform sort of come into the news for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they're not always good, we'll be honest, but it is always nice and refreshing to see when a platform as big as Robinhood makes such an impressive sort of foray into a new region. And we saw them explore cryptocurrencies as well. In 2022, there was a new partnership and sort of a new offering where Robinhood was sort of exploring crypto a lot more. That may have been because of the hype, but that has still stayed, and that is still an offering that the investment platform has. But the reason I like this article and this sort of announcement from Robinhood was, as I said, they started a waiting list to sort of trial and find out about UK consumer preferences in November. And now that it has officially launched, it has revealed its findings. And I thought it was actually quite insightful and to sort of see what UK users were really prioritizing. Admittedly, some of these will overlap with other regions' priorities as well. But it was interesting to see that one of the biggest things for UK investors was that they hated having to pay fees, be that on national or a foreign exchange. They hate paying fees on top of their investment, which I completely understand. I mean, when I've invested in crypto before, I had like a grace period where this wasn't with Robinhood, it was with someone else, but I had a grace period where I didn't have to pay any fees on any crypto that I put down or any withdrawals that I made. And then as soon as I started to see some success and wanted to take some money out after a while, there was now a fee that I had to pay on top of that. And I was like, oh, brilliant. So I guess my profits aren't as great as I thought they would be. And I think, so for me, I completely understand why people, when they see, there is no fee associated with this would be a fantastic sort of new offering. Another interesting thing that I thought was really good with the new platform was that it was a 24-hour investing platform, meaning that investors did not need to trade during sort of Wall Street hours. They could trade whenever they pleased, and it really increases sort of access to investing, because for people that are sort of stuck at work during work hours and just cannot get away from their desks to really investigate what they want to invest in, they now have this opportunity. And I think it's a really good way to sort of add flexibility and convenience for investors. And then there were some other notable findings as well, that Robinhood offers 5% AER on uninvested cash. And of course, I don't see a world where people aren't happy to sort of see a return on cash that's uninvested. It was also revealed that it was easy to use. And 70% of UK users were investing fractional shares compared to 30% investing in whole shares. Again, this is something that is just creating flexibility within people's portfolios and allowing them to really explore different avenues. And it's not sort of saying you need to put all your eggs in one basket. It's really sort of letting you spread out and like I said, sort of diversify your portfolio, which is always a good thing. And there were a few other things too, and there are other offerings with the Robinhood. Well, now that it's launched in the UK, there are other offerings as well, sort of its stock rewards and its web support. I mean, for example, just going back to the fees, research from Radius Insights showed that the largest UK brokers typically charged UK investors with a £10,000 portfolio an average of £240 per year to invest in US stocks. And over a 10-year period, this would add up to thousands of pounds spent on FX and commission fees. So removing that really is saving a lot of money for consumers and allowing them to really put more money back into their investments should they wish. So what I wanted to discuss with you guys really today is, what is the biggest selling point to you for an investment platform? Is it no fees? Is it an easily accessible and sort of, for lack of a better word, clean and nice app? Or is there anything missing, do you think, from this offering? So I don't know if it's necessarily missing, but I think perhaps a forced education on, the risks of investing before using the app was a possibility. But then I also was thinking that might in fact put consumers off because they think, I don't want to have to go through this sort of training that I already know. But then for a new user, it might be very useful. And it becomes a thing of, as a new consumer, are you just trying to get to investing as quickly as possible? So you just click yes, I know everything, when you're going through those terms and conditions to sign up, and you opt out of the training and then you end up losing money. That was another thing that I was thinking, but I don't know. Yeah, I really wanted to sort of see what you guys really valued the most. And if you were a new investor and you were looking at perhaps signing up with Robinhood, what one of these aspects would stand out to you, and what do you think perhaps is needed, if there is anything? Polly, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I guess my viewpoint can be from someone who would be a new investor, because I don't know anything about investing in the slightest. I've used a couple of apps, like those like intro to investing apps that you see a lot. I've used a couple of those before and still haven't learned anything. So for me, coming from that kind of side of things, I do love a no fee. I'd hate paying fees. Love the no fee thing. But also, I really like what you were saying, Francis, about sort of like a forced education. And I suppose calling it forced education sounds really dramatic. But I think if I was going to, get Robinhood and I was going to start investing, I would want to know what I'm doing, because I have no idea what I'm doing. And I would love for someone to tell me what I need to do, because I feel like sometimes people don't tell you what you need to do. And whether that's on them, whether that's on me for not knowing, we won't go into it. But I would love to have some education around this and actually learn something, because I think investing is such a big, scary topic for people like me who have no idea about any of it. And I feel like even I have an unfair advantage, having a job that I have in the fintech world. So like maybe I'd fare a little better than sort of the average consumer, but I know nothing. So I need people to teach me how to use it. So I think definitely that kind of thing would be very helpful to me. And I guess it's how you present the education, because I think you're right in saying, a lot of people would just like fly through it, click, yeah, that's fine, just like fly through stuff. And I guess if you are a seasoned investor, then you would that would put you off maybe. So I guess if you had like an option when you were signing up to be like, I've never invested before, tell me more, but then are people going to use it? It's a tricky one. It's really a tricky one when it comes to financial education, as we've kind of explored previously. But yeah, I think that would definitely be very helpful to me. But I think, just as like a side note, I love how Robinhood are really listening to their consumers here. And I think that is a really fantastic thing that a lot of other, companies in general, doesn't have to be exclusively to fintech, should really take note of, because they've really listened to their consumers. They found out exactly what their consumers want, and they are doing it. And I think that is just a perfect example of like listening to your consumers, and that's how you build a loyal customer base because you're listening to them and you're giving them exactly what they want. So of course they're going to use your service or your product or anything like that. And especially when thinking about a different location, because I think a lot of companies fall into the trap of assuming things will be the same everywhere, where, as we know, that's not the case. So just because something is popular in the US doesn't mean it's going to be popular in the UK, and vice versa, or every other location. So the fact that they're doing this very specific consumer localized research into what consumers want is fantastic. So yeah, I think, I'd love these new features. For me, definitely some education. And I think, I don't know. I don't know what else. The problem is I've never had any interest in investing whatsoever, even though I'm sure a lot of people will tell me that's wrong and I should want to invest my money. So I guess something to appeal to me in that way, and I don't know how, I don't know what, but something to make me want to invest, other than you can make so much money and you can like all the people on TikTok tell me. But no, I think it's really cool. I love it.
Yeah, I think what you said there really sort of almost resonates with what we were saying before in Tom's article as well, where if you listen to your consumers, it can be anyone. It can be sort of a specific community of consumers, or it can be just, any old consumer. It doesn't need to be anyone, but just listening to consumers really is the best way to be successful for any organization, really. And then to cater to those desires as well, I think is just a surefire way for success. I agree with you that, in the sense, I think saying forced education probably sounds bad, but it is almost a necessary thing. It's just a way of sugarcoating it a bit better. Perhaps it's just a thing of like you said, for a new investor to really understand. But then it's like, do they really want to go through that process, or do they just want to dive straight in? And it's very difficult. And I feel like maybe it's not a thing of enforcing it straight away, but making sure that there's always a very easy pop-up saying, are you concerned about anything? Do you have any stresses about anything? And Robinhood does have these educational sides to sort of give insights, but I'm not sure if it's just a thing of, and this is just talking more generally as well. It's not specifically talking about only Robinhood here, but just investment platforms, be it traditional stock investments or crypto investments. Especially, I think, with crypto, though, I think there needs to be a bit more sort of almost an annoying pop-up, just to be like, are you sure? Not trying to be annoying, but just, just want to make sure you're not losing money here. I'm looking out for you. I'm trying to be your friend. I think that's what a lot of organizations really need to do. And there's obviously a fine line, but they've got the resources. They've got to sort of understand what that fine line really is.
Sorry, just to butt in, I feel like what you're saying is that we need to bring back Clippy, but
Oh, absolutely! If we bring back Cliffy, that is crypto
Justice
Cliffy.
for Clippy.
There we go. You know what? Recently, I was missing Cliffy. I think I was looking at my Word documents, thinking, "Damn, where's that paperclip?"
I was just gonna say the one that got away.
The one that got exactly. Tom, what are your thoughts? Do we need Clippy back?
It's the biggest question we've had all day, and there's only one answer. But everyone wants Clippy back. I don't know why they got rid of Clippy. We need him back in every aspect of life, not just Word and investing. We need him everywhere. But no, I think what you both said about these sort of investment platforms is spot on. To be fair, I think also being someone that doesn't really have much experience in investing, anytime I have tried it, I think I tried like trading 2-on-2, and they give you like the virtual money to put on real stocks and see how you would have done had you really put it on. And I lost all the money. I was like, you know what, investing and trading is not for me. And I think, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, you need to give people an education, but investing is the one area where it's not like there's nothing black and white. It's not like if you see this peak and this trough on the graph, then it's gonna go up. It will score. It's gonna go down. Like it is a case of no one really know. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that have an idea more than me, but you never truly know like what the next step is for a price, or So I think all you can do is educate people about the risk, and most people are aware of the risk. They know that whatever money they put in, they might not be getting back out. But in terms of what would attract me to an app, just a really simplified approach, everything nice and easy to digest. And like you said, if there could just be pop-ups, little Clippy coming up here every now and again. When I click on a graph, Clippy can go, oh, look at this section of the graph. It means this. To really simplify it and really, I'm just asking for investing for dummies, but I think there's depending on how interested you are and how knowledgeable you are, there are different sort of aspects that will be enticing to you. But yeah, I think really and truly, let's just bring Clippy back. We'll update him a bit and introduce him, and we'll all be making stacks with Clippy for sure.
I think, well, first and foremost, yes, strongly agree. Justice for Clippy. But I think from sort of looking at like what you were saying just there, perhaps it's just a thing of saying, when you get those pop-ups and it's like, the only reason I can think of right now is on Netflix when it's like, continue watching, don't show this again, or stop watching, like after you've left the show on for a while. Like, all I can think of is if a pop-up comes up and it's like, okay, close this down, but then show it again. Or it's don't show this again ever. Like, I understand it. And then it's just a thing of like, as time goes on, eventually you're going to be like, cool, I don't need this anymore. But just at the start, perhaps for like the first, I don't know, X amount of times that you open the app sort of recognizes this person could be new. I'm just going to sort of provide some pop-ups. But I'm aware of the time, so let's move swiftly on to what I learned this week.
Yeah, let's do it. You've stolen half of my script now. But if you want to hear anything more about any of the stories we talked about today, head on over to thefintechtimes.com, where there's plenty more news and insights over there. And let's move swiftly on to what I learned this week. Each week we hear so many news and insights being on the Fintech Times editorial team that we thought it'd be fun to share that with our listeners. So Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week I learned that the Pension Bee research estimates that around 4.8 million pension pots are considered to be lost among the UK population, with nearly 1 in 10 workers believe they could have lost a pension pot worth more than £10,000.
Fantastic. And Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week, we all attended Pay 360. One of the biggest findings that I got from that was from Vincent Belloc, the Vice President and Managing Director of PayPal UK, who said that 71% of Gen Z use social media to make purchases. And I just thought it was actually quite a lot more than I would have expected it to be. I didn't think social media was that popular, but go figure.
Fantastic. And what I learned this week is that pay by bank as a payment method is now ranked as a top 3 payment method in the UK, Netherlands, Finland, Spain, and Germany from new research from Bright Payments. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me this week. We've prattled on a little bit there, but again, really interesting insights as per usual. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next one.
See you guys next week.
See you guys then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.